We're trying out the Campark T70 wildlife camera. I'll be assisted today by my crack team of experts, Mr. Blue Jay, Miss Chickadee, the flying squirrel family, red squirrel, raccoon, junco, possum, and a few others. So stay tuned. Okay, today we're going to test out the Campark T70 digital wildlife camera with 14 megapixel CMOS sensor. This is the second wildlife camera that the Campark people have given me to try out, and I really like this one. First off, its compactness. Now I might add we're doing another test out here in the wild al fresco, so you might hear a dog barking or a squirrel chirping or the wind blowing. But again, the Campark, this particular Campark camera is very compact and solid, and typical of what you would expect of a wildlife camera. It's got 44 IR lights and microphone here in the front. But what I like about it is the solidness. It's got two options for tripod attachment. It's got a nice solid support for a tree. I've actually had Bushnells break on me when I was tightening them before, so this one has got a fair amount of strengthening. And it was really pretty straightforward. It comes with a comprehensive instruction manual, and it's really well written. They've come a long way with improving the instructions over the years and cameras like this. But the first thing that you see right away, I know the price point for this camera is in the $50 to $60 range, which, you know, a few years ago was amazing that you could have all these features for just $50 to $60. But in this one, the first thing you see is you have a live screen. You know, basically it's like a live video or a camera. And in this mode you can take pictures. I'm going to look, we're actually overlooking the mountains here. I'll take a shot, take a picture, change the mode, and take a video. I'll take a video. So I mean, in this case we're not even using the motion detection or nighttime. We're just using it like a regular video camera. Now interestingly, this will actually run for, in this mode, almost 30 minutes. So in a pinch, if you're out in the wild and something's going on, you can actually use this as a video camera in a pinch. But you know, obviously it's the big benefit of this to me is in seeing, first off, what your field of view is going to be, what scene you're going to be taking, and also quickly reviewing your pictures to see if everything's working right. You know, I can't tell you how annoying it is if you have a camera that doesn't have this feature, because especially me, my applications tend to be taking a very specific area, knowing that a specific animal might be stopping by and trying to capture their behavior, and I have to have the scene set just right. So if you don't have this scene preview like this, live scene view, you have to keep going back and forth to a laptop or some other kind of viewer to see if you've got even the right view set up before you can start enjoying it. So to me, that's a really big deal, and to have this feature, this live feature like this at this price point of a, you know, $50, $60 motion detection camera is pretty amazing. And I'll take you through the setup screen next. You got your choice of modes, you know, video, camera plus video, or timer still. And in this guy, I'll just select camera. Now photo size, you have your choice of 14 megabytes down to 0.5 megabytes. And again, that's a trade-off between quality and how much of the disk space you're going to use. Now, for my use, I almost always use 14 megabytes because I'm generally not letting the camera run for a long period of time. But if I'm going to let it run for 6 months or so, then you might want to choose something smaller like 5 megabytes. Video size, it comes in, you know, you have your choices. I almost always shoot in 1080p, which makes large files, which of course fills up the disk faster, but it's a trade-off. You'll have to experiment between what your particular use is. And the picture number, it takes 1, 2, or 3 photos on a trigger, and that's just your preference. Right now I'm running 1 photo because you get a little bit better quality if you run 1 photo rather than a burst of 3. Video length, this is a nice feature because some of the even high-end cameras limit your video length, but you have your choice of up to 3 minutes. And in a way, your video length, say, I'm going to keep it set at 1 minute. your video length setting kind of compensates for triggering, because if you're trying to catch very interesting behavior of a very specific creature or situation, sometimes letting it run for as long as 3 minutes is really great, because there's no chance that when it's resetting and 5 or 10 second delay between videos that you're going to miss something. Now, of course, the trade-off there is you're going to use more of your battery and more of your disk space. Interval. So that's how long you wait between shots. I tend to go with a 5-second interval, and you're going to get possibly more. That's just a nice feature to have. The periodic interval is something I probably won't use very often, but you can set a specific time to run. And the shutter. This is kind of unusual. Most the cameras I've tried before didn't have a shutter speed, but this kind of affects the motion, especially at night, whether it's going to be blurry or sharp. But again, there's a trade-off between sensitivity. Right now I'm running at the fastest shutter speed, and I'll show you some neat examples of that later with some flying squirrels. Timestamp, self-explanatory. Right now I'm running the timestamp in test mode, but when I do actual shooting, I tend to turn the timestamp off just to have a cleaner view. Time switch would be if you want to set it at a very specific time to start and stop. For example, you're expecting, maybe you just want it to run at night or a certain time of the day if you're trying to catch some kind of unusual activity around your property related to security or whatever. But again, if you want to back out of anything, you just hit menu and you back out. Password set, you can put a password in here. I don't particularly have a use for that. Serial number is good if you're running, say these cameras are cheap enough, and if you're trying to do a lot of documentation, you might want to buy 4 or 5 or 6 of them and spread them around in different areas, and then if you put a serial number on them, it's just a little bit easier to keep track of which the data is from which camera. Now, this is a feature that's nice to have on a cheaper camera like this, is you can set the intensity of the IR lights at night. If you're trying to get maximum coverage at distance, obviously you want it in high. In my case, a lot of times I'm shooting closer up, so the lights can actually be too strong if you're shooting a subject, and I'll show you some examples later. If you're shooting a subject that's too close and you have the lights up too high, you'll overexpose, and there's an automatic feature here. But a lot of times the auto feature, even on the most expensive cameras, can't compensate for a subject that's very close to your camera. And I'll show you some examples of that later. Volume on, the sound recording. One of the things I've been really impressed with this camera is the quality of the sound for a, it's mono, but it's real noisy out here at night, as you'll see examples of. It's just the cicada and the cricket season, so the sound at night is almost deafening in the deep forest, and you'll see some good examples, hear some good examples of that when I show you some data that we captured. Volume play, self-explanatory. Auto power off, you set that. Backlight, set the clock. Everything in here is very intuitive and simple. There's nothing super complicated about this. Is for formatting your card. My advice, this uses a standard SD card on here, but I use a micro SD with an adapter because I can switch back and forth between this and other cameras. That more and more you're seeing cameras using the micro SD. So if you're going to buy a card, I would recommend buying a quality card. This one I bought a high-speed SanDisk with the adapter. If you use a cheap card or a card that you've used in other cameras, you might have problems with recording and triggering, and there's nothing worse than having a really good setup and getting some really great animals or activity on your camera, and then finding out that the file is corrupted or it didn't record properly. And really, most of the issues with motion detection cameras relate to the quality of the batteries and the strength of the batteries, and the quality and the formatting of the SD card. Language, of course, self-explanatory. The default set puts everything back to default. And the system option here, if there's ever a firmware update for this camera, usually you can check the Campark manufacturer site. If there's a firmware update, you can do that. So that's a quick rundown of the menu. It's really pretty easy to use. And now, one thing I want to notice, sometimes I hear from people that have issues with setting the camera. Okay, it's in setup mode, which is the middle position. I just set up the camera the way I want it. You don't then go right to the on position. You want to turn it off. And now you've saved and orderly saved and stored all of your setup information. Then, if you're ready to record, I recommend going to setup, and you see it, everything's working, and you can take a few test shots and review them. So you just take a shot. I'll take a shot, for example, of the box here. And then we'll replay that. And there you see the box that I just took a picture of. You just hit replay again to turn it off, and you're back in live mode. And then just go to on. And shut it up, and you're good. One thing I noticed is it's real firm to shut, which is good, because I think it has a nice waterproof seal to it here. And again, I'm really happy with the fit and feel of the camera. You can see it fits in the palm of my hand there, but I like the simplicity and neatness of this. So you're all good to go, and I've already tried it on a tree. I'll show you a picture later, but it comes with a very simple strap to use, nothing straightforward and strong. The USB cable, which is nice. You can download it to your computer, but I tend to mostly just take the card and download from the card. The other thing is it comes with all the Campark cameras that I've seen so far have come with this nice little permanent adapter, which would be good if you're going to use it for home security or security around the lot or some place where you're going to run the camera for a long time. But this would be something you would attach like up under the eave of a house or somewhere like that, and it has a gimbal adjustment so you can get it in just about any location and leave it there. So yeah, so I'm impressed with the construction solidness. I mean, when you want, for a basic camera at this price point, what you want is reliable triggering, accurate recording, and I'll show you some examples of that. I've really been impressed with the triggering sensitivity. Sensitive to small mammals, but not overly sensitive. It's less likely that you're going to miss something. Now, some of the higher end cameras might have a little bit better resolution. I think the 14 megapixel pictures that I captured are certainly sufficient for most people's uses. They're at about, I think, 72 dots per inch. Some cameras run at 96 dots per inches. So when you look at the maximum resolution photos at full size, they might see a little graininess, especially at night. But actually it's better to shrink them a little bit and get a look at them because there's interpolation that takes place between the various photograph sizes. But it depends on what you're using. If you want basic documentation and decent quality imagery and video at this price point, especially with the live preview. I really enjoyed using this camera, and this is the kind of camera at this price point where I can sometimes you just want to document what's going on with the animals and then come back later and maybe do a more detailed study or better high quality video from a professional video machine with professional lighting. But in order to do that, first you have to do a lot of scouting, and with these quality cameras at this price, you can do a lot more scouting and cover more areas. And so I've been real happy with this camera. It's something that you can find real useful. This is an interesting example. I'm actually running two cameras side by side. The other camera is in photograph mode, and what you see, those flashes that you see, are the other camera taking pictures. So the IR camera can see the flashes and the lights from the other camera, but the person outside wouldn't see anything. It's kind of interesting about insight into how these cameras work. So that flash you just saw there was the other camera taking a photograph. Of course, video is continuous record. This is what I like to see with regard to sensitivity. This is a trigger on a chipmunk, and they're pretty small critters, so that's impressive.